The National Treasury now goes back to the drawing board to deliberate on ways to fund this budget after ministers rejected a proposal to raise value-added tax by 2 percentage points. Ministers in the Government of National Unity opposed the plan, arguing that it would negatively impact economically vulnerable South Africans. It prompted the postponement of Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's budget speech to the new date now of 12th March. Newzroom Afrika's Qaanitah Hunter is live for us now outside the Union buildings. And I guess one of the big questions everyone's asking, Qaanitah, is what happens next? What are you hearing from your vantage point?
Yeah, well, Treasury DG Duncan Peterson, as well as the Deputy Director General for the Budget Office, will now have to go back to their offices and sit and look at different alternatives to present to Cabinet and ways to fund this enormous budget. You'd know that the Minister of Finance was at pains yesterday, Iman, when he took Cabinet in his confidence shortly before he was meant to address the nation and Parliament, saying that they've looked at different options. They looked at increasing corporate tax, for example, and the Finance Minister saying to his colleagues that that would create an unfavorable environment for investment in the country. The Treasury also looked at borrowing more money, but given South Africa's debt burden at the moment, that was not regarded as a wise decision. The Finance Minister, clarifying that it would mean higher interest rates given South Africa's junk status. Then there was the option of obviously cutting government programs. But given the demands, the Finance Minister was going to tell the public that this VAT increase would help government in its efforts to expand early childhood development centres for South Africa's kids, as well as to keep teachers and nurses and doctors employed in the state. It was also meant to fund South Africa's ambitious plan to regenerate its rail systems. At the same time, there was a plan that the Finance Minister presented to Parliament, or rather was going to present to Parliament and presented to the Cabinet, that they would increase social grants above inflation rates so that the most vulnerable of South Africans would be able to manage the burden of a VAT increase. This is all now out of the window, Iman, as now Treasury has to scratch his head. The President saying that dialogue will be collegial, that there would be a broad-ranging conversations, but we know that Treasury will regroup and not engage publicly until the 12th of March.
And it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of comes out in the wash, and this is part of what we'll continue to discuss with economists and experts around whether he might actually go, well, I don't know if he will now, because we heard yesterday that 2.5 arrangement seems to be out of the window, and that was going to go SARS's way. There certainly needs to be a conversation that happens then at some point, I guess, between the SARS boss and the Finance Minister. Any idea of whether there will be such a meeting? And also whether we're hearing any signals of whether the Finance Minister will still avail himself to the public to explain some of the concerns or to allay some of the fears and concerns that not only citizens have, but also economists, investors and others.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the priority of President Cyril Ramaphosa today, to kind of calm these tensions between his Finance Minister and the head of South Africa's Revenue Service, Ed Kisvetter. Ultimately, they are on two opposite sides. Does South Africa increase VAT? The SARS Commissioner says, well, it doesn't actually help in increased revenue. We have an example from 2018. So I think it will be important to see how the President handles this. We know that later today he will be addressing the G20 meeting. Now, Iman, that's important because South Africa has long been arguing around, reduction of debt costs for African countries and for the developing economy. South Africa is in a huge debt crisis. We're sitting at something like 74% debt to GDP rates. We see the real manifestation of this. South Africa just simply cannot borrow any more money to fund its public programs. And so I think that those are two massive headaches that the president has. We'll see and we'll track whether there will be any direct conversations between the Minister of Finance and the SARS Commissioner as well.
All right, just a very quick final word, Qaanitah, on the cohesion inside the GNU now. Where are we at this morning?
I think that, the DA has obviously claimed victory for this delay, but all political parties are saying that they weighed in and were against the proposal by the finance minister. I think the question now is what happens next. There's a lot of allaying of concerns given the market reaction to the development, with the Democratic Alliance saying, this was something that was, properly handled by the executive. But basically, budgets are always the real test of a coalition government. There are 10 political parties in the government of national unity, and all of them have different ideas about how to fund government programs. And they obviously have been pulling and pushing in different ways. It will be interesting to see what they end up landing on come March 12.
Qaanitah Hunter, thank you very much for that. Outside the Union Buildings in Pretoria.